I want to talk to you guys today about something near and dear to my heart, and it comes down to the core aspect of MMORPGs and how I engage with them in a way that I feel, personally speaking, very healthy, balanced, and joyful. However, I wasn't intending this video to actually be a response, but in a way, this is also being measured off of an incredible video by Kira TV talking the MMO genre is dead to me. That's the title of it. I'm going to link to it in the description and tag them. If you guys haven't seen that video, highly encourage you to go give it a listen because he puts into words things that I think are fundamentally true from this genre perspective. Like when I go out to Reddit, when I go into the comment section of this video and other videos, like I'll generally see this theme about how MMOs were better when, and an idea either that the new genre MMORPG is fundamentally flawed and that the old genre is better, and vice versa, that there's things in the new genre that are fundamentally better and the old one was flawed. And it, generally speaking, the way I end up viewing it is that I kind of see within the MMO genre itself as the style of MMO, like almost new, old versus new, as their own subgenre. In fact, actually, you could classify it as maybe even Sandpark versus Theme Box, or either way, it works out. Hopefully you got what I was throwing down right there. But beyond just that simple designation, watching and listening to Kira's video this morning, I really have to feel like I need to play a little bit of devil's advocate, kind of, take a different approach to his approach and how he plays the genre. Not that he's wrong and not that you're wrong if you agree with him. So note that this is just the way that I end up approaching it, because originally speaking, I was planning on making a video called the end game begins at level 1. Like when you have a mindset of an MMO and your end game begins at level 1, part of that's going to be by design of the developer, but also the other side of it is a actual mental choice that you, the player, can choose to make. I think fundamentally that ends up changing the entire game. It kind of helps either bring back the disillusion or the illusion that you're no longer on a treadmill, or perhaps it actually makes the world more of a character than anything else. And then you're participating in it from a multiplayer perspective, but either in an active multiplayer or an asynchronous or passive multiplayer. And what I mean by this is that I put this to practice in how I approach and play games. Final Fantasy XIV is an interesting example because the MSQ, the storied part of it, is the carrot on the stick. It's not about rushing to level cap as fast as you can in Final Fantasy XIV, especially at the start of an expansion, where traditionally the time you would enjoy more of that kind of grind is towards the end of the expansion, when all the content and systems are really fully fleshed out and in place. But the story is really what makes you really want to go to the next thing, rather than having to feel like you're going to be on some gear treadmill in Final Fantasy. And that's actually one of the things I always try to advise players on, is that note that as the treadmill gets lighter and easier over the course of the expansion's life cycle, you'll find that if you grind it out every 3 months, you could end up fatiguing yourself faster than you realize. Because essentially, when you boil down an MMO to just its chore-based kind of content, your bonuses for daily X, Y, and Z, your bonuses for weekly X, Y, and Z, it's very clear how I think the magic in and of it, this genre, goes away. I think essentially when you look at it, when I look at approaching work, I don't want my games to be my job, right? Like that's a key aspect, but MMOs have streamlined it and made it so viable that when you hear of somebody who, like, I just log in, I do X, Y, and Z, I'm out in 30 minutes and then I don't touch the game for a week. And it's like, for me, there's a part that concerns me. Now, you can obviously overconsume a game as well, and just the idea that you're kind of touching the game keeps you connected to it. I get why retention mechanics are there. I get it. They are there because they work until they don't. But the idea here, like, again, the thesis of this video is the end game starts at level 1. Now, put this into practice. I put this into New World and in Final Fantasy 11. That's where this was born, is Final Fantasy 11 for me, which is modeled off of EverQuest. But that idea of just kind of going about the world and experiencing it and being a part of it, I think a key aspect of a kind of a game design ends up being a player-driven economy, because as a player, whether you're low level or high level, doing anything, generating resources will allow you to put those out onto the market. Thus, the quests are very fluid. Like, I could go look at the markets themselves, and yes, I would say the New World could do a much better job at kind of highlighting some of these things, but seeing kind of what people are needing, what's high in demand, what are people willing to pay for, and then kind of choosing to do that. And having that mindset of kind of just being able to choose whether I want to quest or I want to grind or I want to level or I want to do X, Y, and Z, it gives the game a much lighter and more relaxed experience, and also offering that sweatiness, that competitiveness that you can choose to also engage with in and of itself. Now we'll have to wait and see, obviously, what happens with this game specifically over time. But right now, for me, like, I think that New World in and of itself is really kind of nailing that idea of the end game begins at level 1. And we were streaming it last night, and I kept reminding people that, and I was surprised, and that's why I wanted to sit down and actually make this video, by how many people that was a foreign idea to. The end game is always at level 60. And yes, there's content at level 60. There should be content at level cap for you that should be exciting and you want to participate in. But the content shouldn't be confused with the end game. The end game should always be there. It should always be present. The things you're doing on your way to the level cap content is all still a part of the core endgame experience, which means and brings value to those ideas. It brings value, like if I was going to get an invite from a low-level player who wanted some help on some quests, I get value. I get value out of that because we can go and get things, and I'm going to get resources that, again, supply the market and have that kind of connective tissue. It's that passive multiplayer. It's not the fact that you can do a solo experience. And that's kind of where I also saw some people make some interesting cases around solo or single player, is that in a single player game, like if you think of like God of War, right? You think of these like really big, impactful single player games, like you don't tend to have that type of experience in a multiplayer MMORPG, because in a single player game, from a resource perspective, they're able to dedicate a lot more to it. So that MMOs, I do believe, over the course of the last, decade, have been more inviting to that single player experience, which isn't fundamentally flawed or bad, because it does help bring more people into the genre itself. It just doesn't necessarily going to deliver a single player experience that you couldn't get, in a single player game. And I've seen people make that argument for 14, that imagine how good 14 would be if it was a single player game. And the thing that I always kind of think about that is that kind of cuts you out of your recurring revenue. Like a recurring revenue within a game is something a lot of these companies go after. That's why it's really fundamentally interesting to me with Amazon now having Lost Ark and New World and working on a third MMO. Like at least algorithmically, it's a fundamental interesting question about the genre as a whole, and whether or not you're happy with it or you're not happy with it. Now, again, obviously, endgame, setting it to start at level 1, there's a part that the game devs have to kind of support in that regards, because, like, if you look at something like Lost Ark, hey, what's up? So if you look at something like Lost Ark, for example, Lost Ark is clearly built on that daily active user mindset, and what you'll end up seeing is that as people get frustrated, over time, those get eased up, and then the treadmill is brought in. And I think overall, like, I get the design theory behind that in terms of, making it less intrusive for players to come back and experience the game. But as a longtime veteran of the player, like, that's where I just end up almost preferring horizontal style content where, yeah, you can go grind for that and it has value. And that value is persistent style value. It's a hard sell, because there's so many people who've approached this game and this genre in so many different ways and have been introduced to it in so many different ways that it's easy to kind of have nostalgia glasses for how things used to be and how that would make them better. But a good case in point is that as much as matchmaking, I think, overall changes the content and how it's designed in a game, you see here people just absolutely not enjoying the fact that New World doesn't have that kind of experience. And so it kind of does boil down to, for lack of a better phrase, you think you do, but you don't. And personally speaking, I think that, I'm curious about the future of New World and its party finding system that they said that they're introducing here sometime this summer. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. Anyway, guys, I hear the kids, needing my attention, so I'm going to go help them. Okay, I'll be right there. And it's, at the end of the day, play however you want. Just have fun with the games that you're having fun with. If you're not having fun, it's okay to take a break. Like, it's perfectly good. I would highly encourage it. It's healthy, and I think you'll have a great time taking a break. And then if you ever do return, welcome back. We're glad to talk, shop and MMOs with you. And that's just going to be how it is. Thanks, guys, so much for your time. Hopefully you have a great day. Hopefully I'll see you in my next video. But until then, take care.
Yeah. It's time to chill out on the couch and read some comments. That's right. You know me when it comes to Destiny. I'm off with a clan, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Oh yeah.